Hello, my friend. It's Matt and Lily from Best Friends Club, and in this video, I'm going to show you the 5 ways that artists like you can make social media much less stressful, negative, and overall less of a burden on your daily life and your mental health, while still having it as an effective tactic and tool that grows your music career and your artistic career. So I personally do use social media quite a bit to promote my music, but there's a couple of things that I've done along my journey of getting to 5 million streams and getting to the area that I'm at right now in my music career. I'm gonna automate this process and systematize it, so although it seems like I'm using social media a lot of it is actually kind of set up as a kind of a set and forget kind of way. And I find this is very, 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 very useful in making sure that I still get the benefits of social media in my artistic career, but I'm not as stressed out and worried about it. So before jumping into the 5 tips, I did want to drive this point home by showing you a quote that I found that was particularly appealing to me, and it was from helpguide.org, and they mentioned that using social media often can increase FOMO, feelings of inadequacy, dissatisfaction, and isolation. In turn, these feelings negatively affect your mood and worsen symptoms of depression, anxiety, and stress. And I thought this was just important to bring up because that's kind of what they're talking about when you're just simply using social media more as like a general consumer. And I think this is even heightened even more when you're an actual creator, particularly if you're putting out a bunch of content, social media stuff that's about something that you're passionate about, something that you've created and you really feel strongly about. It can be really intense when, say, you don't get the amount of likes you wanted or the amount of views you wanted. And obviously, it's so easy to say, just don't worry about the likes, don't worry about the views. But these are our babies. These are our content. This is stuff that we've created about stuff that we absolutely love. And it could really, really be harmful and really suck when these kind of things aren't reciprocated when you're putting out content. So to help you out with all this, I do have 5 really useful tips that you'll start actually being able to use today. So let's just jump right into these. So the very first thing that I want to talk about is using social media as a method for nurturing your fan base as opposed to a method for discovery or getting new fans into your world. So particularly over the last maybe 6 months to a year, what I've been honestly noticing is that social media can be super useful. Obviously, you've heard so many stories of artists blowing up on TikTok and all this kind of stuff. But I think for more normal, everyday artists like you and I, it's really not as useful as it once was for getting new fans into your world. Obviously, you can still get some. And what I've been finding it a lot more useful for is nurturing fans that have already joined your world. People that have already found your music, whether it was on Spotify or any ads that you have been running or any other promotion you've been running, eventually when fans do want to like dig in deeper with an artist, they're going to make their way over to your social media profile where they can follow you and keep up to date on things. And this is really where I'm seeing a lot of the benefits of social media being for artists these days. Because really the idea of going viral is kind of BS and is very, very like edge cases. Not everybody can do it. It's really irregular for that to happen. And honestly, I think trying to go viral and have that piece of content that absolutely blows up is just not good for your mental health. I think it's important to set better expectations for both you and your content by reframing it in your mind as more of nurturing content as opposed to discovery content. So although it is possible to get discovered on social media, again, it's really hard for those viral moments to happen. And on top of that, organic social media is very difficult to scale. So the idea here is, say if you start putting out a bit of content, getting a little bit of traction, if you want to scale that up, what are you going to do? Start doing 15 posts a day, 20 posts a day? It's not very manageable, and trying to scale up social media like that, it's very difficult if you don't have a team or if this is something that you're just doing all day long. Because let's be honest, artists like us, we have a day job, we have a family, we have all sorts of other obligations that we need to deal with, and social media shouldn't be dominating our lives and our mental space. So the idea here is simply to reframe the idea of social media in your mind as something that's for nurturing current fans as opposed to finding new fans. And it'll be a lot easier for you to develop content because you know that you're creating it for fans and listeners that already know you, like you, trust you, and accept you for who you are. So you're not creating content for strangers and trying to convince them to like you. It's for the fans that already know you. So it's a lot less stressful when you're going in there and creating content because it's for these loving and nurturing people. The second tip is to batch create your content so that you can optimize your time. So this is something I've talked about a lot before on this channel. And it's something I do all the time. My social media content for my music and the social media and the YouTube content for this channel is always batched about 2 to 3 months in advance. So the idea here is that you can laser focus all of your time and all of your effort to one task at a time. This is a really cool concept that I heard from Circa from Indepreneur, so shout out for them and all the cool stuff they're putting out. But the idea is something called switching cost. So when you're working on something, it can take a little bit of time to kind of get into that flow state where you're really running in all cylinders. So the idea is if you keep switching what you're doing to move on to the next step, you're going to have to keep resetting that kind of meter, and there's a switching cost to you moving over to a new task. So instead of creating content, editing that content, and then scheduling that content or posting it, what you can do is focus on one of these things at a time and batch it. So the idea is to set one day out of the month or a weekend out of the month where you can dedicate all your time to just creating all the content so that at the end of that day or the end of that weekend, you have content for about 2 to 3 months if you want to be that ambitious, or at least a month in advance. So there are multiple benefits to doing this. One is you prevent that kind of switching cost phenomenon from happening. Two is that you have a bunch of content that you can then send another day or another weekend editing, and then another day and another weekend for scheduling out all that content. But also one thing is that it makes it a lot easier to convince yourself to get to work. So if the idea is every single night you're making social media, you have to convince yourself, oh man, I have to make a piece of content. That kind of sucks. You can kind of reframe that to, okay, I'm spending this day creating a whole month, a whole 2 months, a whole 3 months worth of content. This is worth my time, and it can be a lot easier to convince yourself to get started because the payoff is a lot higher than creating one piece of content. So this directly ties into point number 3, which is you can use content batching to get more help from your bandmates. So just like how I mentioned earlier that it's a lot easier to convince yourself to get to work when there's one day dedicated to batching as opposed to all that time and effort for one piece of content, this will also make it a lot easier for you to convince your other bandmates that usually don't want to get involved with this kind of stuff, or people from your team that don't want to get involved with this kind of stuff, to actually get involved, because you're presenting them with a lot smaller of an ask. Instead of like, hey, can you come over every single night and work on content with me? The idea is like, hey, we're going to spend a weekend doing this, or hey, come over one day. We're going to have pizza. We're going to chill. We're going to spend the whole day making content. It'll be a lot of fun. And we're going to have all of our content scheduled for a couple months in advance. It's a lot easier to ask for that kind of commitment from a bandmate or teammate as opposed to the constant every single day asking them to help you out with content. And this is really a thing for both you and your bandmates. What sounds better, once per day or doing something once per month? Because let's be honest, creating all this content stuff, you are asking your bandmates a lot, and you're asking yourself a lot to be creating all this kind of stuff. So by making it as simple as possible and as efficient as possible to create this content, you're doing both yourself, your fans, and your bandmates a favor. And the fourth tip is to multiply your content with bang for your buck content type. So essentially the idea here is that when you are creating content, you want to get multiple birds stoned at once. So there's a common saying of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, but the idea here is you want to kill multiple birds with 1 stone. And there are 2 ways that I would recommend doing this. One is that you can take long form content and cut it down into short form content. So a very popular example of this is the kind of podcast style, where you may see something like the long form Joe Rogan podcast, which is like 2 or 3 hours. They create that one piece of content, but then that gets cut up into several pieces of smaller content. And you can replicate this idea by, say, if you filmed a full concert set, or if you did a full DJ set, something where it's like maybe 30 minutes to an hour of content creation, where then you have that one piece of long form content, but then you can cut it up into snippets of the song, the full song cut out, and you can see how you can really create multiple pieces of content from that one piece of larger content. And then the second thing that I want to talk about for bang for your buck types of content is content that services your ultimate goal as a artist. So instead of, say, creating a silly dance video where you're just trying to promote your song, that is obviously a thing that you can do. I don't want to stop you from doing that, but I'd recommend something a little bit more like, say, if your content type was going to be cover videos. And the reason that you wanted to do cover videos is because you think they'll do well on social media, because you need to learn cover songs for an upcoming set, and you want to practice learning other people's songwriting styles. So the idea here is that you're creating content. Yeah, that is one thing that you're doing, but you're also servicing your other goals that you have in your music career. So it's a lot easier, again, to frame this as something that you want to get involved with when the idea is like, okay, I'm just creating content, versus I'm creating content, but I'm also creating cover songs for an upcoming set, and I'm going to be learning some brand new songs and learning some songwriting skills. When you approach the content creation process like this, where it's servicing your ultimate goals, whichever you've defined that to be, it can be a lot easier to approach this content. You'll do a lot better job at creating it, and it's just a lot more fulfilling because you're not just out there as an artist posing in front of a camera creating content for content's sake. It's also actually servicing multiple points in your music career and your artistic career. And then the fifth and final tip that I have for you is to use social media scheduling to automate all of your music promotion and your content promotion and all that kind of stuff. So this is kind of what everything has been boiling down to. The idea of figuring out how you can batch create content all in one go so that you have a whole huge library back catalog of content that you can use. The idea then is to simply use the social media scheduling features in whichever your social media platform of choice is, and schedule this out in as far as advance as you can. So basically what you can do here is schedule all of that batch content. You can also look through all of the older content maybe you did last year and repurpose that content by scheduling that out as well. And ultimately what you're doing here is automating your social media so that you can free up your time to do whatever the heck it is that you want to do. You want to make more music, you want to work on a new album, you want to do graphic design, you want to spend more time with your family or your kids or your friends, you want to go out, you want to do whatever you want to do. This is the key component here to making everything really sing. Once you have the batch content, you can automate it by scheduling it out, and then you can just relax for as far as you schedule it out. I would recommend jumping into your social media to reply to comments and messages and all that kind of stuff as well. But really, it's so relaxing having that much content filled out, and you can really dedicate a lot of your time to things that are a lot more important than social media when you get to this point of actually scheduling and automating. So those are the 5 tips that I have for artists like you that want to make social media less of a burden, less negative, less stressful, less depressing, but still get the benefits of posting everything onto social media. And those 5 tips are to use social media for nurturing as opposed to discovering, batch creating your content to optimize your time, to use content batching to get more help from your bandmates or teammates, to multiply your content with bang for your buck content types, and then lastly, to use social media scheduling to automate all of your social media. So if you really like the idea of scheduling and automating all of your social media, I would definitely recommend checking out the 7-step release checklist that I have in the description below. This is the 7 steps that I go through every time that I'm releasing music. That includes automating social media, includes automating ads, and automating the whole music promotion process in general, so that again, you can further free up your time. It's a completely free checklist. There's also some bonus courses as well and guides in that, so I definitely recommend checking out. It's the best way that I can help you hit the next goal in your music career. So if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one, and good luck in your next release, my friend. See you then.